So here I am again at the Montauk Art Show in New York. Exactly 1 year ago, I made a video about my new art show tent, the Extreme Canopy X7, and since then, I have heard from dozens of artists who have purchased that tent because of that video that I made, which really makes me wish that I had some kind of affiliate deal with Extreme Canopy and would get a commission for all those people who bought tents. But that's a story for another day. In this video, I'm going to talk about what it's been like to use the Extreme Canopy over the past years, some pros, some cons, some tips and tricks, and just my overall experience with using this tent as my primary art show tent. If you're new here, my name is Evan Reinheimer. I'm a full-time artist and I have been exhibiting in outdoor art festivals for nearly 20 years now. One of the most critical pieces of equipment for outdoor art festivals is the tent itself. There's a variety of different style and quality tents out there, so choosing the right one that suits your needs and keeps your artwork safe is very important. One of the first things I want to show you is, because this tent is really heavy and the frame is always together, it doesn't come apart like other tents, and that makes it difficult to carry around. I've seen some artists bungee the tent frame to a hand truck and use that to cart it around. That's probably the best way to do it. I, for a while, was like bear hugging the frame, lifting it up and then kind of walking really funny to move it around. However, an artist named Yoram Gal showed me how to carry this in a way that doesn't put a lot of strain on your back and is a lot easier to do, honestly. It's gonna look really funny, but it works really well. What you do is you put the tent on your back like this and then reach behind, grab the frame, bend your knees so that you're not lifting with your back, lean forward, and then have the weight of the tent rest on the small of your back. And honestly, when I'm doing this, I can't even really feel the weight of the tent because it's all in my legs. And then I can walk like this. It makes sense because this is the way that Sherpas carry things when they're hiking up big mountains. And then I can carry the tent pretty effortlessly on my back like that without putting a lot of strain on my lower back because the weight goes to my legs. The first few times I set this up, the frame was really tight, and after I set it up maybe like a half dozen times, it got a lot easier to push up. And what I mean by that is it was really hard to click these corners into the pins here. I found that the best thing to do is to lift up the fabric on the side so that the fabric isn't keeping the frame from expanding to where it needs to be. Another thing you can do to make it easier is if you have a second person push up on the pole in the middle, it makes it a lot easier to click in the corners. But what I typically do is push up the center as far as it'll go, then come over to the corner, step on the bottom, and then push up until it clicks into the spot. Once you get one corner clicked in, it's a lot easier to click in all the other corners. But the first few times I did that, it was really, really tough to get this clicked in. Another thing I learned from Yoram Gal, he gets a ratchet C-clamp and then puts the top part over here and the bottom part underneath here, and then clicks it tighter, and then that pushes the frame up and clicks it into place. Hey, Evan from the future here. I didn't have that tool that I was talking about when I filmed that last bit, but I have it with me now, so I want to demonstrate how it works. Once you get your tent to this point where you're mostly set up, but the corners aren't quite pushed into the pin, it's a little bit hard to get that last bit up. So using this ratchet C-clamp here, you put it around the bars, click it down, and just ratchet it up until it snaps into place. You probably want to get one that's a little bit longer than this, so I'll link to one that'll be really good for this tent in the description. Since I do a lot of shows where I do a double booth, I have two of the 10x10 tents, and I had them put this flap on one edge of both tents so that I can put a rain gutter in between the two tents so that water doesn't pour between the tents when it rains. I don't think this is a default thing that they put on all 10x10s, so if you think in the future you may want to do a double booth, have them put one of these flaps on the side. This way you have the option to add a second 10x10 for a double booth in the future. So we've come to the first area of improvement that I found on the tent. These rings that are on the corners for your tie-down straps are nice and strong. The webbing that's on them is strong. However, the way that they're attached to the top of the tent is okay. Mine are still on, but I question how long they'll stay attached for. It feels like they're not sewn in and reinforced as well as they need to be. And a few artists have told me that theirs have ripped off. So if Extreme Canopy is watching this, figuring out a way to reinforce this side so that these D-ring loops are a little bit better attached is really key to securing the canopy to the ground. And I figure if mine were ever to rip off, what I would do is I would just put a lashing strap over the frame here and attach my tie-down strap to that. The loops on the corners of my light dome canopy all ripped off also, so it's not that this is a problem that's unique to the Extreme Canopy. Making sure your tent is properly secured to the ground is important to the safety of your artwork and those around you. I'll leave a link to these tie-down straps, weights, and screw stakes that I use in the description of the video. I mentioned in my original video that I was using the sidewalls from my light dome tent, and I still am. That has worked out really well for me. I've been told by several artists that Creative Energies, the people who make the light dome canopy, will make sidewalls that will fit the Extreme Canopy. So you can call them up and have them make walls for your Extreme Canopy. One of the big mistakes I made with this tent in the beginning was using really cheap stabilizing bars that were meant for low quality pop-up tents. I mentioned them in the first video I made about this tent, and I absolutely do not recommend using the stabilizing bars that I mentioned in that video. Instead, what I did, thanks to a suggestion from artist Leanne Moss, is I called Flourish, the company that makes mesh panels, and had them send me these hex leg adapters for stabilizing bars. I had stabilizing bars already that I had been using on my light dome, and Flourish makes adapters so that you can use those stabilizing bars on a thick hex leg tent like the Extreme Canopy. So I just wanted to be clear that I'm not being paid for any of this. YouTube barely pays me anything for these videos. The best thing you can do if you want to support my channel here is subscribing to my channel and doing the little thumbs up thing, and leaving comments and stuff really helps more people see these videos. I also have a link in the description of the video to Amazon. I have an affiliate account there, so if you're going to be shopping at Amazon and you click that link, it gives me a little bit of a commission on anything you purchase. It doesn't cost you anything more. And all of the money I make from that, which is very little, I just roll back into creating these videos. It's opening day of the Montauk Art Show. I'm all set up. You'll notice that my tent is really, really tall. I'm using 8-foot pro panels with the extensions on the top, so that adds like another 20 inches or so to the height of my pro panel. So I needed to make sure that the Extreme Canopy that I ordered would fit the height of my panels. And the standard height of the Extreme Canopy is nowhere near tall enough to fit the panels. So the tent I have has the extended legs, which is an option that at the time I ordered the tent was not available on their website. I had to email Extreme Canopy and have them add the extended leg option to my order. To show you how tall it is, I have my ladder set up here. I'm going to measure the height of my pro panels, and then we'll see how high the clearance is for the tent. So let me get this in position here, and this is a very unscientific measuring I'm going to be doing here. It's a pretty good approximation, we'll call it. So from the ground to the top of my pro panels with the extensions on them is just under 115 inches. And the clearance of the Extreme Canopy is probably only like another 1.5 to 2 inches above that. We're going to call it 117 inches clearance on the Extreme Canopy with the extended legs at the maximum height. And of course you don't have to put the tent up to the maximum height. There are 2 other levels that you can set the height at that are about 14 or 15 inches between the pins when you raise it. So if your panels aren't crazy tall like mine, you can set the extended leg height at a lower level. The most important thing to consider in an art show tent is how safe and secure it is, especially in bad weather. It's a beautiful weekend this weekend, and we're not expecting any bad weather, but I've been through a few rainstorms in this tent, and I've had no leaking with it at all. I would argue that it's probably just as sturdy, if not a little bit more sturdy than my light dome was. You can see it's a pretty windy day today, and the tent isn't shaking at all. My light dome used to rock back and forth a little bit if there was a breeze like this. Even if I come over here and shake the tent like as hard as I can, it doesn't move. So once everything is set up, this tent is really steady. So I just noticed that the artists on both sides of me also have the exact same tent that I have at the exact same extended leg height. You can see Liz over here, she doesn't have hers up to the highest setting, but it is still the extended leg version, and Andy has hers up all the way, and I know that both of them bought these tents because of that video that I made. When it comes to pop-up tents, there is a wide range of quality and brands out there making pop-up tents. Most of them are pretty cheap and flimsy, and when it comes to high-end art show tents, there's not a huge variety of different brands out there. They're mostly dominated by Light Dome and Trimline. I used Light Dome tents for a long time, over a decade, and I've been super happy with them. In fact, even after switching to the Extreme Canopy last year, I still kept my Light Dome tents because there are a few shows that don't allow any kind of pop-up tents. However, I do think that with the prevalence of the Extreme Canopy, once shows see how strong and secure they are, I think they'll reconsider that. And by now you're probably wondering if the Extreme Canopy is the right tent for you, and I can't really answer that, but I can tell you the things that I really like about it are that it's quick and easy to set up. It saves me about 30 to 40 minutes setting up and another 20 to 30 minutes when I'm breaking down at a show, while being just as secure as my previous tent. And that time saving really adds up when you're doing 25, 30 shows a year. So I think the Extreme Canopy is a great choice. I do still think that Light Domes and Trimlines are great choices for art show tents as well. But it really comes down to what is the best tent for you, and that kind of depends on what you can afford. You should really invest in the best tent that you can afford. The Extreme Canopy is very expensive, so are the Trimline and the Light Dome. When I started doing art shows, I had very little money. I still have very little money, but when I started out here, actually, the Montauk Art Show was the very, very first show that I did. I think now it's 18 years ago, and I was using a very inexpensive, cheap, lightweight pop-up tent. It worked for me for a couple of seasons before one time when I was setting up for an art show up in Portland, Maine. The frame collapsed in on itself, and it was a huge disaster. And I decided that if I was going to take doing art shows seriously, I really needed to invest in a tent that was going to be safe and secure for my artwork, a tent that I can depend on from show to show to show to stand up to the elements and repeated setting up and breaking down, and that's when I invested in the Light Dome. But if you're just starting out and money is a real concern to you, maybe starting with a lightweight pop-up tent might be the thing to do for a little while. What you really need to be sure of then is that you're taking the extra precautions to make an inexpensive tent like that safe and secure for your artwork, for you, and for people around you. There's a real danger from tents collapsing or blowing over in the wind or when a storm comes through, so it's important that whatever tent you use, it keeps you and your artwork safe. However, if you have a bigger budget, then investing in a tent like the Extreme Canopy, a Trimline, a Light Dome is really a much better way to go. For me, after a year of use using the Extreme Canopy, I highly recommend them. I think they're great. They're definitely not perfect, but what I really love about it is that time-saving aspect. Especially when I'm doing a double booth like at this show, it takes a long time for me to set up a 10 by 20 booth and put up the walls and hang my pictures. So if I can save a good amount of time setting up the tent, I'm all for it. And of course, the last thing I want to do after a long weekend at an art show is spend a tremendous amount of time breaking down and packing up my booth. Setup and breakdown is where this tent really shines. It packs down really quick. Once I get to this point, I can have the tent down and packed up really quickly. Something you want to be really cautious of if you're going to leave the top on the tent while you fold it up is making sure that the top of the tent doesn't get pinched in between these little cross parts here, because it makes it hard to close the frame up all the way, and it also eventually can wear a hole in your top. So if you're going to keep the top on when you fold your frame up, make sure you're lifting it out of all of these cross parts. And you can see how quick it folds up. I always give it a good squeeze at the very end to make sure it's nice and tight, and then I put it in the bag to keep it protected.